Hello and welcome to the
Okay.
2 Minute Drill Podcast. I'm Michael Rochman. That's Sav over there. And we are here talking about wide receivers and tight ends. And look, I mean, this is an exciting class. If you haven't heard about the hype already, there are plenty of pass catchers in this upcoming 2025 NFL draft cycle that are going to be really enticing playmakers, as they always are. It seems with these rookie wide receivers, it's just another incoming star or five. And it seems to be the case this year. First and foremost, though, before we get into everything, Saavaidra, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm ready to record this podcast with you and talk about some receivers that are good and some that might not be so good.
Yeah, and so today we're going to be talking about some of the consensus top 10. Maybe, the
Hmm.
consensus view is a little varied right now, but we'll talk about some of the guys that have been most talked about at wide receiver and at tight end. We're going to start off with wide receiver, though, and that is Evan
Hmm.
Stewart, starting at Texas A&M, transferred over to Oregon this offseason, going to be playing with Dylan Gabriel and Tez Johnson, the guy we'll talk about a little bit later. What were your thoughts on Stewart during your offseason watch?
First of all, my first thought was that he wasn't as good in 2022 as he was in 2021, and that was just pretty apparent. He's still really young, but he's so like slight, and he didn't make any improvements like as a route runner from freshman year to the sophomore year. So I guess the hope is that he'll go to Oregon and they'll just figure things out with him. They'll get him going a little better. He can't really just do any like sweeps or anything because he's just not got the bulk. He can't really get off press super easily, but I feel like he's got the release. He can get off the line, he can get in space and catch there. But then the numbers are just they went way down in the second season. Maybe that's just because Wiegman got hurt and they were just a catastrophe like the whole season on offense, and they fired everybody at the end. But
Yeah,
I guess you just hope that now in a more stable environment things pick up.
Yeah, 175 pounds. So obviously someone that's going to have some concerns in terms of his overall frame. And I feel like those issues kind of show up. I think his release is pretty impressive to where he's able to avoid the press coverage as much as some of the other smaller receivers. He's got very nice
Mm-hmm.
footwork at the snap, but I think there is some issues of physicality at the catch point that are very prevalent, especially on film. And I do think that there was a little
Yeah.
bit of maybe just like a lack of motivation when it came to that Texas A&M offense because Stewart seemed
Yeah.
to start the year hot, and during his freshman campaign, he
Mm-hmm.
looked amazing. And then as the season kind of trailed on, you can kind of tell there was like a lack of juice there that you just don't expect from Evan Stewart.
Yeah, I didn't really want to like say it. I never like going there, but it really did feel like he just kind of gave up on that team last year, which I mean, I can't blame him too much for that, especially after Wiegman got hurt. That team was sinking quickly.
Yeah, it seemed like they were going by new quarterbacks every single week. Jimbo Fisher
Hmm.
seemed very clearly on his way out. So I don't know. There was a loss of motivation. I think maybe that took a step off of Stewart. But overall, I do think that there's playmaking ability and there's flashes in his true freshman year that are able to be bought into. We kind of saw
Hmm.
Worthy have a similar type of roller coaster thing where he
Yeah.
dominated his freshman year, maybe took a little bit of a step down in terms of hype in his sophomore campaign, and then really bounced back in his third season. I think Stewart could follow a similar path, even if they're kind of different players in terms of prototype. But overall, I do think Stewart has some really nice footwork and just route running ability in his tool bag. And I think as long as he continues to develop that, polish it, and work with Will Stein in an offense that kind of works well at setting up the receivers for success, he should be in for a solid campaign and be able to build up his draft type again.
Yeah, I think right now he's probably a guy that I'm kind of expecting to be in 2026 as opposed to 2025. But if he blows up, and everything comes together, he could easily end up in this draft and be like a day two guy, probably. I don't know about day one right now, at least.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But moving forward to another wide receiver that hit the transfer portal this offseason, Deion Burks, leaving from Purdue to Oklahoma, 5'9", 190 pounds. That maybe isn't the greatest frame, but as we've seen in the NFL, a lot of these frame issues are becoming less and less concerning as long as you can make
Mm-hmm.
plays. What were your thoughts on Deion Burks?
I mean, I think you're right there with the frame issue, but like you said, these NFL offenses are so good at getting guys into space at this point, unless you're, like the New Orleans Saints, who don't seem to be capable of doing anything with getting guys into space and just have to hope they get downfield. But yeah, with Burks, the frame is kind of small, but the speed's good enough. It's not like crazy. He's not out there like a real burner that's going to hit like a 4.3s, but like mid 4.4s probably. I think he tempos his routes really, really well. And I think that's mostly how he wins is he can slow down and speed up at will so that even when the ball is underthrown by like 10 yards and he has to come all the way back because his quarterback has a t-shirt cannon arm, he can get back quick enough to make the adjustment. And his body control through the air is pretty good too, to adjust and actually make the catch at that point.
Yeah, I was on the same page as you. I really loved this pacing, and I thought it was something that he continuously took advantage of to really kind of knock out defenders from making a play on the ball. Some of the size guys, they're able to box out the receivers, but you have to have that body control, whether you're big or small. And I think Burks has really nice body control. He keeps composure all the way through his route, and I think it's a big advantage for him. I'm really excited to see him as sort of the maybe not safety blanket, but the go-to guy for Jackson Arnold in an offense that has a lot of questions heading into 2024 with Levy heading off to Mississippi State, and just overall questions about how good Arnold can be in this as a new era as he enters as a starter. But yeah, I'm really excited for Burks, and I think he's someone that is going to be really fun to watch at the college football level. I had around third, fourth round range for him, but I think that's something that could easily go one way or another. And part of that is just being in an offense. It's going to give him touches and give him better opportunities to make plays in the air. So it's something that I'm really excited to see, and I think Burks could be an impact player in the SEC as Oklahoma enters their first year in the conference.
Yeah, I think the safety blanket comment's really good too because the other guy's Nick Anderson, who is the opposite of that, where he's just gonna run directly downfield and try and get open. But yeah, I think, and then also with him, he did have that return work last year in 2020, or I guess not last year, but the year before last in 2022. Some teams might like seeing that and think, he's got that returner body and like move set and ability to like change his pace. So I could see a team maybe pushing him up the board a little bit because of special team stuff as well. I probably have him more like around like 5 right now, just because pretty limited production so far. But I think he could easily explode in production with like an actual offense around him.
Yeah, I definitely have a similar grade on him, but I'm a little bit more optimistic, I think, when it comes to the summer preseason scouting. So that's probably why I'm giving him a little bump. But moving forward to the next wideout, Stanford star Elic Ayomanor, wide receiver, the guy that is connected with Ashton Daniels and should be one of the top wide receivers in college football, 6'2", 210 pounds. What are your thoughts when watching him this offseason?
My thoughts were I love the physical body of him. I think despite that physical body, he's weirdly not that good at catching in traffic. I think his concentration's not super good yet, but I think it'll get there. I think his speed is also a little questionable. Like sometimes it feels like he can really hit like a top gear and get going like pretty fast, but I feel like he needs like a runway to hit that. I think he loses a little bit when he's just working side to side. His change of direction, just that acceleration kind of falls off.
Yeah, he had a huge coming out party against Colorado where it really kind of put him on the map of him making some crazy catches over Travis Hunter. But I think part of that may have been due to the two-way fatigue that was going on with Hunter for the season long endurance going on there. But still, a very talented physical receiver that I think I agree with you in terms of the long speed. I think there's some questions that kind of hinder his ability to stack on top of his coverage guy. So I think the big question is, how are you going to continue to excel as a physical wide receiver that kind of boxes out at the catch point? Right now at the college level, he is able to eat up space underneath because every cornerback is playing him like 10 yards off, just making sure that they aren't giving him the easy jump ball downfield. But that's just going to create some easy opportunities for Stanford to hit him on a curl route underneath and let him kind of do some work with the ball in his hands. But I do kind of have some questions about how he's going to continue to excel at the NFL level, just because I think so many guys succeed with the size and they make those jump ball catches and they make those downfield, kind of contested situations work. But then that doesn't necessarily translate over to the NFL. And I think he's kind of in that dangerous territory where I'm not sure how much of it is going to continue to translate when he isn't necessarily like the 6'4", 6'5" type of guy. He's more 6'2", and he doesn't have the long speed to necessarily continue to stack and separate on deep ball. So there's a little bit of concern here for me when it comes to Ayomanor, but overall, I think he's a very talented wideout for sure. And at the college level, you can't really ask for much more from what you're getting out of your top pass catcher.
Yeah, he's really a dream to have a guy like that at the college level. It's just big, who just kind of knocks guys around. Who can play the bruiser, the bully ball player.
Oh, yeah, he's definitely a bully to other cornerbacks when they're hanging out around like 180 pounds. But moving forward to someone that's unfortunately, even a little bit lighter than that. Tez Johnson, 5'10", 160 pounds is the listed weight. We know how those school sites work. The listed weight is probably like a little 5% decrease. So this guy might be hanging out in the Trinidad Holiday range. It doesn't matter, though, because, you watch him on tape, and this guy is making defenders miss. He's going into contact head first, not worried about what he's going to take back from safeties and crashing cornerbacks. He's someone that, in terms of footwork, speed, and agility, he's going to be in those tiers of like the Zay Flowers and the other guys that are just creating so much separation. You give him a little bit of inch, and he's going to make those defenders miss. He's going to create a big play out of it. There is some questions, about how often he's going to be able to make that happen, especially in situations where he's getting pressed at the line of scrimmage or when he's operating an offense that maybe isn't as college friendly, like Will Stein's is. What were your thoughts on Johnson in terms of your evaluation?
I loved Tez Johnson last year, and I was like, oh, surely he will declare after this wonderful season. And also with Bo Nix, who's like his brother going into the NFL. And it's like, no, he stayed in school for another year. It's like, well, okay. My thoughts were pretty similar. Just he's so small and so light, but we're seeing Tank Dell do great in the NFL now. So my hope is that the NFL will look at Tank Dell and say, he can be Tank Dell, and we'll take him now. Because I'm scared that the NFL is just going to hate him just because he's so tiny. I'm scared that like the advanced grades were really bad or something, and that's why he didn't come out before. But yeah, he's so good in the open field. Like he's so hard to catch. Just he stacks guys so well. He's so just good at that quick motion and just getting off to the side and just leaving a guy behind. His catch radius though is minuscule. It is incredibly small. His arms don't look very long, and just you got to hit him dot. It's got to be a dot for him. Even in, at Troy, it was the same way. And that's part of why it was so much better at Oregon, because they were better at scheming him open. Like when there were the times where he'd be blanketed by a corner, you got to get the ball in there. So if you have a QB who loves throwing to open guys, that's fine. If you have a QB who's really good at hitting pinpoint, that's fine. If your quarterback plays for, I don't know, like a blue team in the Northeast with like white and red accents, you might be in for a rough one, especially if the weather is a little rough. But I love him, just, and the metrics are all awesome with him as well. Well, not awesome, but good enough. I do wonder if his speed is actually that good downfield. I don't remember him ever having like super burner speed or even being like as fast as like Ayomanor, like at Stanford. It feels like he kind of tops out a little slower than some of the other guys. He doesn't have that true vertical threat to him.
Yeah, he's someone that added weight would be nice, but I do think similar to what you said, Tank Dell, even Tutu Atwell last year had some pretty nice success where you can kind of, take it with a grain of salt that he necessarily needs to add weight. It's just something that there are going to be teams that are saying, we're not touching that. I'm sorry. We want the 200-pound guy, the 180-pound guy at least. So there's going to be teams that just are against Johnson. But overall, he's a playmaker. And yeah, I expected him to declare because Bo Nix is leaving. And that was literally like his brother, not even like a close teammate, just genuinely his brother. So I was like, all right.
Yeah,
I just was expecting him to declare and, maybe end up a Bronco or something. But unfortunately, not unfortunately, it's probably best for him to do what he wants to do. But he's back at Oregon now working with Dylan Gabriel and maybe, working with another quarterback, proving that he can kind of continue that success with a new thrower is going to help build his stock up a little bit. But he's someone that I'm excited about. And I think he's someone that is going to benefit from being the returning receiver in an offense that kind of needs those leaders to kind of continue to help make the job easier for the incoming transfer quarterback or the incoming transfer wide receiver in Evan Stewart. So it's going to be a fun season for the Ducks, and I think Tez Johnson is in for a big year.
Yeah, I think they'll be pretty great this year. I think it'll be interesting to see how they play in the Big Ten and some of these, like, because the weather's a little different out here, and the type of football is very different out here with how some of these teams' defenses plays, just kind of getting up close and mugging people. So we'll see. We'll see how things go in the Big Ten.
Yeah, a little bit of a process and probably a little bit of growing pains, but very excited for the Ducks. But moving forward to another team with high expectations entering the year, Texas Longhorns, Alabama transfer wide receiver Isaiah Bond, 5'11", 180 pounds. So not necessarily the greatest frame either, but, when you're talking about 5'10", 160 from the guy before, he looks a lot beefier. So Isaiah Bond was a guy that kind of grew into his role with the Alabama Crimson Tide offense as the year went along, especially as Milroe continued to improve as a wideout. I think there were a lot of moments on tape where he kind of showed the ability to become a top level receiver. I think there is still some concerns in terms of just the overall polish and just ability to continuously produce game in, game out. But I also think that maybe there's a little bit of a letdown in terms of the Alabama passing attack because there were times where Bond was just running downfield and Milroe would kind of sail it or short it, and it would just hurt the opportunity for Yak and ability to create the splash plays. What were your thoughts on Bond when watching him, and what kind of impact do you think he can have on the Texas Longhorns offense?
Well, I know you're a Texas guy, so I'm gonna hurt you here and say I don't really like Isaiah Bond very much, at least
That's
right
fair.
now.
That's fair.
I think his acceleration is so good. He hits that top speed so quickly, but he doesn't really always get off the line very well. And I also think any time that they put him outside felt like they were just like wasting him out there. I felt like he really needed to be in the slot, even though he wasn't a full-time slot. The slot like play just felt way more productive and naturally suited to his abilities in space and just getting out quickly, getting aware of where the football is quickly and if it's coming to him or not, and just opening up space for guys. His numbers are way better than you'd think from a 660-yard guy because Alabama didn't throw it a whole lot, and also because Milroe took like a ton of sacks and killed a lot of plays that way. But the other issue I had with him, he doesn't really fight through contact. At least I didn't feel like especially when the ball is coming to him, it didn't feel like he was really fighting to get to it and catch it.
Yeah, catch point physicality was something that I had listed as a concern for him. And I think it's something that, especially when there were some deep plays, it's just, I understand maybe the ball's not guiding you as perfectly as you'd want, but guys like Burks are able to kind of work back to that football and find ways to kind of center it on themselves. And I think that's something that Bond will have to work on. Hopefully with Texas, he's able to do that. I think Alabama wanted him to be like a Jalen Waddle, and I think there's like potential there for that type of speed and
Yeah.
stuff, but I don't know. Waddle's a next tier type receiver. So I don't know. It's a little difficult for him to kind of make that same success and create the same opportunity. But I do like him, and I think there's an opportunity that he's the lead receiver for Texas this year and maybe a little bit better suited offense for him. And I think that could help him elevate his draft stock and maybe make a name for himself in this wide receiver class.
Yeah, my only like concern was like not Bo Nix. Bo Nix got the ball out very fast, but Quinn Ewers gets the ball out really fast. And I feel like there was a lot of times at Alabama where the ball got out really slow, and that gave Isaiah Bond lots and lots of time to find his way open, even if he didn't initially win off the line. Those times are going to be a lot fewer and farther between because if Quinn Ewers doesn't see him open immediately, he's just going to throw it to like Amari Niblack or something.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting situation because Texas has 4 incoming transfers for the pass catchers. There's Silas Bolden, Matthew Gold,
Mm-hmm.
Isaiah Bond, and Amari Niblack. So really anyone can kind of step up and become the alpha there. There's no one that's established. So it's going to be very exciting, especially, the uncertainty at running back with Cedric Baxter going down for the season. So that Longhorns offense is really going to be sort of up in the air in terms of who takes the lead role in terms of production. So Isaiah Bond has an opportunity to do that, but he also has an opportunity to maybe fall 5th in the pecking order. So we'll see what happens as he transfers over to the Longhorns. So moving on to our next wide receiver, and that is Tre Harris out of Ole Miss, the 6'2", 205 boundary receiver that is, very impressive in terms of D speed and the ability to kind of move around the field. I felt like one of my biggest issues for him was just, Jackson Dart kind of undersold a lot of passes when he had some great opportunities running down the sideline. But overall, I think he has some really nice ball skills and just overall deep speed to help him make some really impact plays downfield. I'm excited to see what happens as this Ole Miss offense, I think, kind of leans more into their passing attack moving into 2024. What were your thoughts on Harris when watching him?
I think he's kind of nasty, like in a good way, at the catch point, just in general, he's willing to mix it up with guys and really throw his hands around and really just throw his whole body around too. He's really great at boxing guys out. I would say he's maybe not like the best separator. He's not going to get like tons of space, so you want to lay it over the top to him a little bit. Um, I also think he's probably better just outside. He played in the slot a decent amount last year, but I really feel like you just want him stuck on the boundary and working outside in.
Yeah, I thought there were some really nice moments for him, and I think he's going to continue to grow his game heading into 2024. Transferred to Ole Miss from Louisiana Tech, and a guy that I think can kind of play all over as needed. But yeah, I agree with you that he's probably a boundary guy at the next level, at least for the most part. I did like his ball skills, though. I think he showed some really nice hands and just ability to position his body, get into this matchup, and box him out for an advantage at the catch point. What were your thoughts in terms of his overall value in this draft class? You know, what kind of grade do you think Harris could accomplish by the time we get to the 2025 NFL draft?
Last year I had him second round. I'm expecting he'll probably be like round 2, round 3 again this year. I think it's neat that he was better at Ole Miss than he was at LA Tech. Like he just was better. Like he went from a smaller school up and he got better as a player. He had just better numbers across the board.
Yeah, he put up a great year. So moving forward to a guy that I think a lot of people were hoping would kind of transfer up and maybe take that next step of playing at a bigger program. He did return despite having some draft hype, but he's returning to Colorado State as well, and that is Tory Horton. Saavaidra, I'll let you kind of take the lead on this. What were your thoughts on Horton when watching him?
I think Tory Horton's awesome. I've loved Tory Horton for like 3 years now. A few years ago, he was listed a lot skinnier than he is now. He's listed 190 now. He was probably like a pencil, like 170 before. I referred to him as like, oh, this guy's like G5 Devonta Smith, where he's putting up like insane numbers, and he's clearly the only guy on the offense doing everything. But he's really fast, which is great. His body control is good enough. He's not like really quick, but he's quick enough as well. And he's a good route runner. You know, he runs a lot of different routes. So I don't know. I feel like he should have declared 2 years ago. I feel like he should have declared last year. He has to declare now. He can't find a way to stay in college another year. So
Yeah, I expected him to declare last year. I was getting ready to watch him, and then it seemed like as I started, the news came through that he was going back to school. So unfortunate. He told the media that he runs a 4.3. He said in the high 4.3 range. I think a lot of guys overrate their numbers, maybe gas them up a little bit. So I'm expecting kind of mid 4.4, but there is speed here, and I think he's kind of got like a gazelle type deal where he's very fast in the straight line, but there's a little bit of clunkiness when it comes to trying to make the cuts and just kind of work inside. But he can do it all for the Rams, and I think he's going to continue doing that. I would have liked to see him transfer up just for the sake of seeing what he can do against week in, week out, top level competition. But I mean, I don't know. There's not much in question for me when it comes to Horton. It's just, come on, declare. Like, put your name in the ring already.
Just
we want to see it the next level.
Out here. Just get in the NFL already.
Yeah, so he's our wide receiver 3, and I think he's going to be in for another big year. I think, obviously Colorado State's going to continue to force feed him and, just let him produce at an all-time high. So, I don't know. This is a very talented wideout, and I had a second-round grade on him.
Yeah, I also have a second-round grade on him. I would also say Justice Ross Simmons is gone now, too, so they're going to funnel targets to him even more. Like, his sidekick is gone. So, go out there and just catch every single target.
Yeah, I want to see like a 30 catch game from some of those Jackson Smith and Jigba performances from Horton this year. How about that? Moving up though to our third ranked wide receiver. Oh, sorry. So third ranked wide receiver, we had Horton at 4. Number 3 though, they were tied for rankings. I had him at 3. Sav had him at 4. I had Horton at 4. He had Horton at 3. Emeka Egbuka, wide receiver, Ohio State. Came into 2023 with a lot of expectations. A lot of people very excited to see what he can do alongside Harrison Jr. because both of them were already dominant. He took a little bit of a step back. He didn't have as much success, but returned to school, looks to build on his profile and kind of regain some hype. What are your thoughts on Egbuka when watching him?
I think Egbuka has like the absolute ideal frame for a slot receiver, just like the perfect frame, like 6 foot, 205 around there, 200, 205. Speed's really good, probably mid 4.4s when healthy, which was not last year. That was really my issue and why I have him lower than Horton was just he got beat up pretty bad last year and just wasn't that good anymore. I think he'll bounce back pretty easily, but will he even be Ohio State's number 1 guy? Like, because they've got a couple of like super duper crazy freaks coming in. They got the true freshman guy, I forget the name of, JJ Smith or something. I don't know. It might be, it might not be, who's like in the freaks list. And of course, oh God. Now I forgot the other guy's name, whatever. But anyway.
It's Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate.
That's it, Carnell Tate. Yeah. He looked really good in his little short burst last year too. So yeah, those two are probably going to threaten him a little bit. I assume he'll just play a lot of slot work and just do a ton of damage there. But yeah, just love the frame. Speed's pretty good. I think the yak is excellent. He had averaged like 8 yards after the catch or something over the last couple of years, which is so good. But I grew up watching like Reggie Wayne, who was really good. I don't think he's going to be putting up 14,000 yards in the NFL, but he has the same frame and speed, I would say.
Yeah, I think when you kind of look at the prototype that Egbuka kind of fills, there's a lot of guys around the league that are just very solid and dependable around the NFL, where I feel pretty comfortable saying Egbuka is going to be similar, whether that's, to the level of a Chris Olave or maybe like someone like a Michael Wilson. I think that's kind of the range that you're looking at for him, but he's still going to be like productive, dependable. And I think last year was sort of an outlier for what to expect from him. I don't know if it's necessarily entirely on the injuries or if it was maybe a little bit on McCord or what, but there were some shortcomings in terms of his production, and there was a little bit of a step back that is reasonable to have some concerns on heading into 2024. But I still think this guy can do it all. I mean, he's going to be a slot receiver at the NFL level, but I think he's someone that you kind of flex out wide as much as you need, and he's going to be able to continue to produce in that regard. I think he's very smooth as an operator. He runs some really nice routes. He's got some really nice footwork. I think he's someone that, I don't know. He maybe doesn't have like the exciting, game breaking ability of some of the other top wideouts that we've seen come through the draft cycles in recent years. But I just think he's so dependable and so safe that it would shock me if he's not at least a first round pick this year.
Yeah, even though I have Horton higher, I would also be shocked if he wasn't a first rounder. I think he probably would have been a first rounder, even if he came out last year after the injuries. Just somebody would have taken him late in the first.
Yeah, so many people were waiting on a receiver, and I think that need is just going to continue year in, year out for teams. Just saying, hey, if we have three great wideouts, that's not a problem for us. We'll make it work. But moving up to another great wideout in this class, wide receiver 2. I had him as 1, you had him as 2. I'll give you the tie for the number 1 guy. So Luther Burden the third, kind of just carbon copy of Deebo Samuel when it comes to ability after the catch. He is taking hits on the ankle and just shaking it off and making ways to picking up an additional 10 yards once he's got the ball in his hands. Definitely force-fed a little bit with Missouri, but I think he's just so good with the ball in his hands that it doesn't even matter. He showed some ability over the middle of the field. He showed some downfield ability to work as a deep threat. I think he has potential to maybe even be better than Deebo. I know how crazy that is because Deebo's such a talented wideout, but I do think he has a little bit more versatility and usage in his profile. 5'11", 208 pounds, so he's almost got like a running back type frame, but he is such a good wideout. I'm really excited to see what he can do. Even if it's in the slot, I think he's someone that's going to contribute at a high level for an NFL offense.
Yeah, I feel pretty much the same way about Luther Burden. I think his yards after catch ability is crazy. It is Deebo-like. And like you said, he could be a little better. I think he could be better in the receiving aspects of the game and actually like route running downfield. I do think he needs a healthy amount of time in the slot to function because we saw him year 1, he looked just kind of lost. And then year 2, they started juicing him up with those slot reps and he just blew up and was just destroying everybody. So I also think he could probably do just some like gadgety stuff. You could do a lot of just run plays, sweeps. Maybe you could have him throw the ball. You never know. I don't know.
Give him a few tries, see what happens.
Oh yeah, don't knock it till you try it. You might as well. He's so physical though. Like he'll dig in, he'll get low, and he'll just slam into guys. And I think that's a good thing for a receiver of his style.
Yeah, I do think when it comes to his overall route polish, there's maybe some concern, but I feel like we've seen it with guys like Shanahan and McVay where they're willing to kind of work with that and kind of figure out how to iron that out, and then they'll take the rest of the traits and just make it happen. So I'm excited for what he can do at the NFL level. He's wide receiver 1 for me, but wide receiver 1 for Saavaidra over there, that's Tetairoa McMillan, wide receiver out of Arizona. I mean, when it comes to frame, just sort of unfair. 6'4", 210 pounds. I'll let you take the lead on talking about him, though.
I mean, what's not to like with him, really? Yeah, he's so big. He high points the ball tremendously. His hands are great. He's a really, really good route runner for his size. He's so smooth. You can put him anywhere and he'll be fine. Maybe not at tight end, I guess. You can't put him there. But the only issue, I think, is he's a little skinny, but his yards after catch are still really good despite him being a lighter, slimmer guy. He can still fight through contact and catch through contact, which is good. You need that if you're going to be that skinny. London was good at that too. So
yeah, I wrote down Drake London as my comparison. I felt like there's a lot of similarities when it comes to just the ability to produce after the catch. Even if they aren't necessarily the most fluid guys, they're just so long to where like you kind of expect that kind of maybe stiffness, but it's not even stiff because they're still freak athletes to where they're making great moments on tape and making defenders miss and just putting up great production. So I mean, this is someone that I think is going to be a stud. He's going to be a great outside receiver.
Yeah.
Whether it's, as a guy that's just consistently being used down the sideline or if it's used over the middle of the field, he's someone that is consistently able to do it and produce in that regard. So I'm really excited for McMillan. I think with Fafita, they're just such a dynamic combination from the pass to the receiver to where I just have very high expectations for the Wildcats this offseason. I think that's going to be one of the more exciting offenses to tune in on every Saturday. And, McMillan's going to be a big part of that. And I think he's arguably the best college wideout. And I think he has the potential to be the top draft prospect of the receiving class as well.
Yeah, I think right now he probably is the best receiver in college football. Maybe you could make an argument there's some like lower level guy that's putting up slightly more insane numbers, but yeah, he's just so good. And like to be that size and be so fluid at moving, I think he's more fluid than London, which is for me why he's probably going to be higher for me than London was, even though I had London as a first round grade as well.
Yeah, I mean, both are stud receivers, and I think McMillan's a very safe bet to just continue the success at the NFL level because if there's a coach that's struggling to use McMillan in the NFL, I think that's more of a reflection on the coach.
Yeah, that would be a shock if a coach couldn't figure that
out. Yeah, so moving over to the tight end position. Look, the views weren't going to be there if we just released tight end specific. So we're hoping you guys stick around a little bit longer. This is still an exciting tight end class. Maybe not as exciting as a guy like Bowers last year, but there are some very intriguing options. And, number 5 we're going to talk about is Mitchell Evans, tight end out of Notre Dame, a guy that is 6'5", 260 pounds. I think he flashes some decent long speed, and I like that about him. The stride length is always going to be there, but I think he has some mobility as well. In the short range, I think the stiffness in his hips and the ability to separate kind of shows out, and I think that can be an issue, especially at tight end where you're kind of looking for him to convert in those goal line and short yardage situations. But I think he has the body and frame to where you're excited about him. I think he has some nice hands. He's definitely not the guy that you're looking at and saying, oh, this is, Michael Mayer type impact, but I think he's still going to be a reliable, dependable tight end for this Notre Dame offense in 2024, and I think he can build on that. The big question, though, for me is, durability over the season. He's missed games in the past 2 seasons, so how is he going to hold up in 2024, and can he last for the entire campaign?
Yeah, I feel pretty similarly. I think I'm lower on him than you, even though I'm a Notre Dame fan. I feel like you mentioned, that he's stiff laterally. I think that's part of why he's just not that good in like those like goal line and short yardage scenarios, is because if he can't get off of guys quickly, he can't get up and get the ball, on these like short throws. And I also feel like it hurts him in blocking as well. I feel like his blocking angles can be a little funky sometimes, where he just doesn't quite bend to hit the guy right. Where he'll blow through a guy if he's like right in front of him, but if he's like a little off to the side, things get a little shakier.
Yeah, I do think he has a decent floor because I thought he had some flashes in both categories where you think like you can kind of make that work at least to some degree. And we saw a lot of tight ends kind of go in that day 3 range, whereas early day 3, maybe later day 2, where teams were just saying like, hey, if they have some receiving upside and some blocking upside, that's good enough for us. He's got the size, he's got the receiving, and I think there's enough blocking there to where teams are going to be convinced that he's someone that can kind of step in and contribute in a tight end's room. So I am excited in that regard. But moving forward to tight end number 4, and that's Bryson Nesbit out of North Carolina. 6'5", 230 pounds, not necessarily the greatest frame for someone that you're wanting to line up in line. So probably more of a big slot type of tight end. Those sites like to boost numbers, so this could very easily be like 6'3 and a half, 225 or something. So that could definitely be a little bit of a hindrance in the scouting reports. The weight is definitely evident, but I do think he's pretty physical at the catch point and as a receiver to where there's enough to be intrigued about for what he can do as a pass catcher. He moves around really well. He can turn upfield and make turns just laterally as well to where he's able to generate separation and create some production. I liked him a lot with May, and I think May is probably a little bit better for the situation he has entering 2024, where he's going to be receiving catches from Max Johnson. But I like what I saw out of him, and I think Nesbit has some high-end potential in terms of just if a team's willing to use him as the athlete that he is, rather than try to force him into the mold of a traditional tight end.
Yeah, you can't really force him into that mold. I don't think he's ever going to put on the weight to be that size. I don't think his frame can hold it. I think I have more questions about his lateral agility than you do. I feel like he's more of a vertical oriented guy. His body control is really good. He plucks the ball out of there pretty easily. The blocking is what you would expect from a kind of a tweener guy. And I do think he's just like a big slot. I liked him more a couple of years ago. I kind of soured on him a little bit, but not a whole lot. Like coming into last year, I thought he was easy. Like, no, this is the second best tight end in this class because he's the only one that's doing anything as a receiver up to this point. But at this point, after last year, eh, it's probably more of like a day three guy, actually, if
Yeah,
that.
he's someone that I really expected to declare, and I was surprised that he came back. But maybe being a main focus of the offense with Walker gone and him and McCollum kind of splitting up pass catches, that could make him kind of elevate his stock or at least his image along the college football world. But he's going to be an interesting guy to watch in the Tar Heel offense, and I think Max Johnson is going to have to depend on him. It's just a question about if Max Johnson can effectively get him the targets he needs.
If he can deliver.
Yeah, so moving forward to the next tight end, a transfer from Stanford to Georgia, Benjamin Yurosek, 6'4", 247-pound listed weight and size. What were your thoughts on your evaluation of him?
He's another guy that I think should have declared 2 years ago, where he had his best season at Stanford. He had over 600 yards. He had at one point like a sweep or something that he took 50 yards that was really impressive as well because the his long speed's good. He can burst downfield pretty quickly. He's another guy that has some funky agility stuff going on where he loses speed when he has to change directions. His blocking has never been particularly good. I would say he's more of a receiving threat or even just like a weird gadget player, I guess. But at his best, he was a great receiver before Stanford's offense got a little worse and he got banged up a lot, which is the other issue. He's been injured a little bit off and on.
Yeah, he's going to need to come back at full strength this year. And for the Bulldogs, he's obviously splitting that room with Oscar Delp. They're more than willing to use their tight ends as much as possible, but split between two guys where there's not necessarily a clear leader in that room. I'm interested to see how he operates and what his production levels are. I'm excited to see him with the Bulldogs, though. Obviously, one of the better teams in the country and one of the better offenses. So I think he's going to be in for a solid year, and I think he can kind of rehabilitate his draft image. But overall, I think there are some concerns for me whenever I was just watching his tape. I wrote down that he had a pretty good frame, but I felt like he struggled with just his overall fluidity. I thought that there was just
Yeah.
abilities to like I don't know. You kind of expect a little bit more juice out of a guy like that, and I think he
Yeah.
almost offers like kind of the Stanford mold of like the guys that were kind of more lower level contributors, where they stuck around the NFL for a while. They were like
They were around
somewhat
for
solid,
forever.
random like games where you get like 4 catches, 30 yards, but like there was never that next step. And I think that's kind of where I view Yurosek right now. Maybe that's helmet scouting. Maybe that's a misevaluation. And we'll see him healthy at Georgia, take another step forward. But right now, I'm not as high on him as I've seen some other people be.
Yeah, I think and he also has similar to Evans that we talked about before, the same kind of issues in the red zone with just getting there for touchdowns. He was another guy that just has very few touchdowns despite the rest of his production profile. It's very strange.
Yeah. So another guy that was injured last year, Luke Lachey, tight end for Iowa, just 3 games, but 20 catches in that time. Looked dominant in the Iowa State game. I mean, I don't know. It's Iowa, so you got to just give them like a few
If it's
round grade
Iowa,
bump at the
yeah.
tight end position. But overall, I thought the tape was really impressive. He's got a really nice frame. He's got some really nice ability to catch. I think he separates well both laterally and vertically. I don't know. I thought the blocking was there as well. Obviously, there's still development to be had in that regard, but I thought the flashes were there enough. The injury sucks, and you kind of need to see him bounce back now and just show it at full strength as a fifth-year tight end. But I don't know. I really liked his tape. It wouldn't shock me if he ends up as the tight end one. Obviously, there's one more guy that we're going to talk about that seems to have a nice grip on it. But overall, 6'5",
Yeah.
247 pounds. He has the frame. He has the ability. I like Lachey. Now it's just about getting one last healthy campaign where he's the star of this offense.
Yeah, I would love to see him just have a great year this year and just kind of blow up. And I feel like he'll cap out in the second round. I don't know if he can move up into that first round unless a team is like, well, Laporta came from Iowa, so we'll take this Iowa tight end in the first round. Because he is an older guy and he does have the broken either ankle or leg that happened against Western Michigan last year that completely wrecked his season. He's more of a vertical like get up the seam guy to me, like a seam threat who his stop start's really good. I feel like maybe laterally he's not like super good. None of the tight ends in this class except for the top one to me seem terribly great laterally. It just like going back and forth. But this guy's a nasty blocker too. I think he's probably the best blocker of this top five for me. which is it's Iowa, so of course he is. Iowa's strength and conditioning program is nasty. They'll make anybody a good blocker. Well,
yeah,
except for
I
their
liked
current
his out
offensive
route
line.
ability. Yeah, that's
Oh
fair.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
I thought whenever he was breaking out towards the sideline, he showed a lot of ability that maybe didn't have the same impact when cutting inside. I don't know if that's necessarily just more familiarity with that route to where you can kind of get that explosiveness heading inside, but he was making a lot of great outcuts against Iowa State that were just very impressive and allowed McNamara to just kind of paint the sideline for him, and it resulted in so many nice games.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, and
last guy we got. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, thankfully for him, he didn't have to spend too much time with the other quarterbacks. The later half of the season.
Maybe he faked the injury or something just to get out of there. But I'm excited for both of them to come back in 2024. But one other team in the Big Ten, so we aren't going too much further. The top-ranked tight end for us, Colston Loveland, Michigan's tight end, just absolute stud receiver when it comes to what he was able to do. Wasn't necessarily relied on to be the blocking tight end. They really went to Barner, I believe, with
Barner
that
did
regard.
most of the blocking work.
So
and I think
really
this year I think Klein will probably be doing most of the blocking work if Klein finally plays. I don't know. They talk about him a lot. He's huge and he's on the freaks list, and maybe he'll play. I don't know.
Yeah. So I think the big issue when it comes to Colston Loveland is just Michigan's a run heavy team. So there's a lot of opportunities that go in the passing game where a tight end's not necessarily going to stand out because, tight ends are often like third, second look in the offense. A guy like Roman Wilson was the top priority for the passing game last year. Colston still was pretty much matching his impact in the passing game.
Right behind it. I think he had like 100 less yards over the season.
Yeah, 6'5", 245-pound frame, excellent size, excellent ability. And, when he was used as a receiver, I think he showed just so much ability.
He was a monster, yeah.
The big question, this year is obviously going to be how's Alex Orji going to use him and how much is he going to depend on him? I think he's the leading receiver for this offense. I don't know if they're necessarily going to pass as much as last year, and that's already like a very limited passing attack. But I'm expecting Loveland to be very involved when they do drop back and throw it.
Yeah, there's so much turnover going on at Michigan this year regarding the offensive line and the receivers. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens. Loveland is the guy from before. He's the cornerstone that's still there from the remaining structure. So I assume he will probably be leaned on very, very heavily, at least at first, maybe the whole season. I'd be surprised if he wasn't their leading receiver because of how good he is in the receiving game. All his numbers are good. I'm equally a numbers guy and a tape guy. And with Loveland, he reaches all the thresholds you would want in receiving for a tight end. And he also seems to be a very good athlete. The blocking and physicality overall, I think, needs to be better. I think he can put more on his frame pretty easily. I think, he's 245. I think he can get to 255, 260, over a year.
Yeah, I think the lower body form is where the weight's going to come in. And I think that'll come just with more age. But what's your ceiling for him in terms of just draft value? Do you think this is a guy we could be talking about in that Hawkinson range where he's top 10 type pick, or do you think the league is kind of cooler on tight ends in general?
I'm going to say 10 to 20, unless he has like he goes to the combine and puts up like Kyle Pitts, like insano numbers, then he'll probably go top 10. I don't think he's going to do that. That would shock me. But I think 10 to 20 is doable. I think it's feasible as long as this year is good and he doesn't get hurt.
Yeah, so that is our wrap-up on wide receiver and tight end for the top guys. Next time we're back, we'll be talking about some of the sleepers at the position to keep an eye out on. That's Saavaidra. I'm Michael Rochman, and that is the 2-minute drill. Take care, guys.